Well folks, penalties for intersection takeovers just got more serious. How serious? We're going to find out right after the break. Did you know that the average driver gets 9 traffic tickets in their lifetime? Look, I'll be the first to admit that I've taken maybe a couple of liberties with traffic laws back in the day. And of course, when I got caught, I had to go to court to fight the ticket, which was always a hassle. And each time that I lost my case, it meant big fines, points on my record, and higher insurance premiums. Eventually, I realized that nothing beats having a good attorney argue your case in court. So here's what you do. You download the Off the Record app to your phone and register for an account. And if you get a ticket, simply upload a photo of your ticket into the app and you will be quickly matched with a lawyer in your jurisdiction. Your lawyer will start working your case right away, and in most cases, you'll never have to set foot in a courtroom. Off the Record has a 97% success rate and a 4.9 star rating on Google. And guess what? They even offer a money-back guarantee if they aren't able to reduce the points or keep that ticket fully off your record. Best of all, I've arranged a 10% discount for all of my YouTube viewers, so download the app and register using the referral code FASTLIFE to receive 10% off your first case. Picture the scene. 2 cars line up on a city street. Happens anywhere in the United States every night. Both drivers exchange knowing glances as they both wait for the traffic light to go green, and we know what happens next. As the light goes green, each car rockets forward. One of the cars loses traction at the top of second gear, now doing 70 miles an hour, and also moving at 102 feet per second. Spectators standing by the roadside don't have time to get out of the way, and several are run down. 2 of them died, many more were injured. Scenes like this always make the TV news and have done so since at least the 1970s when I started hanging around cars. Police did everything they could to stop it back then, and they're still doing what they can today, but the problem continues to exist. How? Why? I think it's safe to say that most of us have probably engaged in some form of street racing or speed contest at least some point in our lives, right? Or even if we were just riding shotgun with somebody or in the car. They say that with age comes wisdom and restraint, but as someone who has car friends of all ages, I try to warn people of the dangers and the risks involved, but I know darn well that the temptation is very hard to resist for a lot of young people. I get it. I was young once, believe it or not. Many years ago, it used to be that street races took place in deserted industrial complexes in the middle of the night. That's the way it was generally done. Sometimes the cops would come by and watch, and sometimes they would break it up. People seemed to be smarter back then in retrospect because no one was dumb enough to stand or park past the starting line, knowing full well that if something went wrong during the race, those cars might go out of control and might crash into their nice car or hit a bunch of people, and someone would get hurt or even worse, killed. Oftentimes, the cops would roll up, hit the lights, and the racers would just disperse. Sometimes they would call it a night, or sometimes they would go 30 miles away to do it somewhere else. But they weren't staying in an intersection for an hour. Today, it's totally different. Not only are cars blocking intersections and the participants are running around, but people are running into the path of these swinging cars. We've all seen people being tossed around like rag dolls after being hit. And while it's funny on camera, we have to remember that somebody is getting hurt, and that's not cool. None of this makes sense to OGs in my age bracket. Even more shocking is that people are filming and posting this illegal activity while participants' license plate numbers are in full view of the camera, and some of these people even have their Instagram handle posted proudly on the side of the car or other identifying decals, giant LA Dodgers sign. How? What? Intersection takeovers have become a blight on the automotive hobby, giving all automotive hobbyists a bad name. These takeovers are flagrantly promoted all over social media for the world to see. There have been thousands of injuries and dozens of deaths at these events over the last several years. Most people know that street racing is and has been illegal for more than 60 years. Even watching a street race in the eyes of the law is almost as bad and will often get your car towed, and you'll be slapped with big fines. Street racing, or facilitating a street race, or spectating at street races is illegal, and it has been for a long time, especially here in California. It's punishable by up to 90 days in county jail and a fine of up to $1,000. But penalties can vary depending on the criminal histories of the people involved or other charges that the facts of the case will present to the prosecutors. California law defines a street race as a speed contest under Vehicle Code CVC 231098. If you have been accused of willfully engaging in a speed contest, prosecutors will need to prove 4 important elements to show you were guilty. First, they would have to prove that you were a participant in a motor vehicle race. Second, they'll have to prove that this event took place on a highway. 3, that you willfully engaged. And 4, that the race was against another motorist or some kind of clock or timing measurement device. For the purposes of the California Vehicle Code, a highway is any publicly maintained roadway open to the public for the purposes of vehicular travel. This means that this law most commonly applies to interstate highways, state highways, and public roads. It does not apply to parking lots, private roads, or any roads that are not normally open to the public. Example, Mike owns a skateboard shop. After closing time, he invites Steve over to drag race in the parking lot behind his shop. Because this occurred on private property, this is likely was not considered to be willful engagement in a speed contest, but Mike and Steve could still be guilty of other crimes like vandalism, the parking lot owner, that kind of thing. The last element that a prosecutor would need to show is that you were competing in a speed contest directly against another motorist, or that you were being timed. Road rallies, some of these road rallies where you have timing measurements, right? Generally speaking, the sentence in California for the first offense of street racing looks something like this. First, you might go to county jail for 24 hours and up to 90 days for street racing. A fine between $355 and $1,000. You might get 40 hours of community service. You probably have your license suspended for a period of maybe 90 days and 6 months. Your car will probably get impounded, and every day is like $150 per day of fees, so you have to pay that out of your own pocket. And if you have a prior conviction for street racing in the last 5 years and someone was injured in this race, you could face what's called enhanced penalties, and this is where it gets serious. For someone with a prior street racing conviction, penalties increase to a county jail sentence between 4 days and 6 months, a fine between $500 and $1,000, mandatory suspension of your driver's license for at least 6 months, and if the speed contest caused injury to another person, penalties increase to a county jail sentence between 1 month and 6 months. So you're going in the slammer, baby. A fine between $500 and $1,000. Then, if the race caused a serious bodily injury, as defined by California state law, something like concussion, a loss of consciousness, a bone fracture, this could be treated as a felony based on the prosecutor's discretion. In that case, penalties can range as high as jail time to up to 3 years, fines up to $10,000. That's some serious stuff. Earlier this year, the city of Santa Ana narrowly approved an ordinance that would make it illegal to be knowingly present as a spectator at a street takeover event. Those spectators within 200 feet of an event could be given a $1,000 fine and could be subject to a maximum of 6 months in jail. What are you in for, bro? I was watching cars race. Really? Okay. Add to that, you can expect your car insurance to triple if you're convicted of a street racing infraction. I have a friend who bought a new car in 2018, and because his credit wasn't all that great, he took out a car loan for an 8-year term. His car payment was over $900 a month. After his second street racing conviction with that car, his car insurance went from $3,100 to $6,980 for the year, bringing his insurance payment to $583 a month. What happened? He had to sell his car, and now he's stuck with a girlfriend he doesn't really like because she'll drive him to his dumbass to work every day. Consequences, buddy. Tried to tell you, don't listen, whatever. Police and even our liberal catch-and-release politicians here in the People's Republic of California are getting freaking fed up with it. All of it. Other states are getting fed up too. Texas, for example, has just enacted a law that will allow them to seize your car even if you are still making payments on it and auction it off, or even use it as an undercover car to catch other street racers. And if you don't pay off that loan even though the car was seized, your credit is ruined for 7 years. So for decades, street racers have tried justifying their actions, sometimes asserting that, what was the old argument? Oh, there aren't enough racetracks, bro. Well, this same argument was used back when I was growing up, back in the 1970s, back when we already had Lions Dragway here in Wilmington, California, Terminal Island Drag Strip in San Pedro, LACR in Palmdale, Riverside Dragway, Ramona Drag Strip in San Diego, Ontario Motor Speedway, Irwindale had a strip, Orange County International Raceway still existed, and still illegal street racing was still a problem. There'll never be enough tracks. A friend of mine said, well now, most of those tracks are gone. What are we supposed to do? The government should build more racetracks for us to go to. Really? If I were a scuba diver fan and I lived in the middle of Oklahoma, would I be right to demand that the state of Oklahoma should buy some land, dig a giant hole, and put a tropical coral reef in it for me, right? A more realistic scenario. I used to be into RC cars. One of the country's best RC tracks was a quarter mile from my old house. When the track got shut down, I gave up RC cars because I was unwilling to drive 40 miles one way to get to another world-class RC track. I didn't go out and take over an intersection and start racing my cars. But going back to the original assertion that the government should build a racetrack is just absurd and unrealistic. It's completely naive. The government, all governments, get their money from taxes. Do you think your parents will want to pay higher property taxes just so they can have a noisy racetrack in their neighborhood? Should every citizen driving on the road have to pay more per gallon at the pump just so a relatively tiny percentage of the population can have more racetracks that they probably aren't going to use in the first place? Again, asking the government to pay for racetracks to appease a few is just like asking the government for a taxpayer-funded brothel for sex addicts or setting up a stadium so people can go shoot heroin. You have to expect some opposition, right? The other thing to consider is that there's virtually no racetrack that will let 2 or more race cars do donuts in a small space while pedestrians run in between the cars just so that they can get photos for their gram. Come on, man, it's not going to happen. No one will take the liability. Further, we know from reports that many people at intersection takeovers show up with no driver's license, some have expired registration, and some have no insurance. And racetracks are going to require at least 2 of those things, usually. At most racetracks, at the very least, you need to show your license, and at the very least, you'll have to have a car pass your safety inspection. And a lot of those cars that go to street takeovers will not pass any inspection. So ridiculous of arguments aside, the hard truth is that many people just don't want to go to a racetrack at all. All they want to do is just swing their whips for the gram, and they don't think about the consequences about doing it on the street. I get it, we were all young ones. There are still a number of racetracks in Southern California, and on drag race nights, there's a good number of cars that show up, and that makes me happy. Those people are doing God's work, right? Unfortunately, no amount of fun drag racing will satisfy the appetite of swingers who care only about the smoke show. Look, I was young once, believe it or not. I went to the street races a few times myself, probably 6 or 8 times. But I remember that we never blocked off active roadways, we never stood in dangerous areas, and we sure as hell didn't run between moving cars. And that's when cars were much slower than they are today. Were we smarter? I don't know. And of course, we never filmed those activities and posted them online. Well, mainly because video cameras were giant 20-pound bricks, and there was no internet or social media to post them on. And of course, we never put our names on the side of our cars like some of these people are doing. I'm talking about all these things to give people an understanding of both sides of the issue. On one side, there are the swingers, their fans and followers who just want to see a show. Many of the followers and spectators stand far away from all the action and they just go for the thrill. They don't think they're hurting anybody, right? The other side is comprised of government officials, law enforcement, and parents of young people who have died in street racing events or intersection takeovers. And you can see why there's not going to be much of an agreement. You've all seen the news reports of these events. There was one where one guy was hanging on the side of a pickup truck that flipped onto its side, and the guy got killed. And the truck was driven by his own cousin. One guy's in jail, one guy dead for ignoring the laws of physics, and a family just torn apart. Sad. And everybody says, well, it's never going to happen to me. Well, yeah, it's happened to a lot of people I know. Not me, but a lot of people. And then just 2 weeks ago, there was a street racing crash in Burbank. I don't know if you've ever been in Burbank, but it's not a drag strip. One of them was the son of famous comedian Tony Baker. The driver of the Kia has been charged with 3 counts of murder. Not just speeding or reckless driving, murder. His bail is set at $6 million. 4 families grieving because some dude in a Kia wanted to race. A Kia? Really? What are you people doing? Yes, I know all about Kia stingers, so don't DM me. I'd hate to have to tell my cellmate in prison that I got busted for street racing my Kia. In 2008, 8 people were killed while standing in the middle of the road on Route 210 in Maryland. One of the racers was driving with no headlights and he slammed into the crowd. One of the victims was literally torn to pieces, so much so that they had nothing to bury. Horrible. And cops around the country have had enough. In Florida, California, and Texas, new initiatives are being implemented to crack down in a big way. A CHP friend of mine that I've known for about 30 years or so told me this candidly. It's the flagrant manner in which people promote their events and share their footage on social media that could land people like these in jail for being the organizer, and these people need to watch out. This one guy right here, his IG handle is ATL Moonriders. The dude has 5 open cases already. Can you imagine getting a felony conviction for organizing street racing events? Any street racing felony of conviction will be stapled to every job application you submit for the rest of your life. Is it really worth it? Can you imagine that? Oh, we were going to hire you for this great job, but I see you have a street racing conviction, a felony street racing conviction. Yeah, we have a janitor position open for you. Oh yeah, it's minimum wage, yeah. If that doesn't scare people, perhaps the thought of having their cars seized and crushed by the state, even though you still owe payments on the car, maybe that'll shake people back to reality. That's coming as well. It was tried in the 80s, it worked very well, and then politicians changed their mind, blah, 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 blah. The stiffer penalties will probably deter some people, but there will always be people who are openly defiant. And so for those people, state and country governments are stepping in with more restrictions. The government agencies around the world are planning big things. There's talk of factory-installed breathalyzers being mandated in all cars by 2027. That means you will not be able to start your car unless you can prove that you haven't had a drink. That's assuming everybody's guilty. But it's coming. We know what's coming. Next, you can expect built-in speed monitors and built-in speed limiters not long after that. Why? Because governments around the world are slowly moving towards controlling every aspect of your life. It's happening everywhere. The European Union will be mandating speed limiters in cars starting next year, 2022. You heard that right, speed limiter. The speed limiter technology is called Intelligent Speed Assistance, and it uses GPS data and or traffic sign recognition cameras to determine the maximum speed allowed in any given area. Then the system will limit the engine's power and vehicle speed to that limit. This means also, if you're paying attention, that the government will know when you're speeding and where you were speeding anywhere, making it now possible to send you a speeding ticket in the mail if they choose to go that route, which you know they will. For the interim, you'll be able to override the system by pressing hard on the accelerator, but the system will reactivate every time the car is started. However, the speed limiter will send haptic, meaning motion, audio, and visual warnings until you start driving with the speed limit. That's like having a nagging wife sitting next to you. Slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. She's slapping you the whole time. I look forward to that. We all know that at some point the governments of the world will limit your car speed to 40 miles per hour in a 40 mile per hour zone and so on, and there'll be nothing you can do about it. So freedoms are slowly being eroded around the world, but before they're all gone, street racers and intersection takeovers will only speed up the process and give politicians all the more reason to take our freedoms away. So thanks for that. Do it at a track, people, please, for the love of God. That's going to be it for this time, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you another time.